The dojo fell silent the moment the young black belt pointed at the nurse in pale blue scrubs and sneered, "Now your turn, bitch!" Phones lifted like weapons. The crowd waited for blood. What they got instead was a masterclass in lethal restraint from a woman who'd learned to fight where mistakes meant body bags, and the spoiled champion who mocked her was about to lose everything she thought she owned. Before we dive in, if you're hooked already, stick with me until the very end of this story. Drop a like, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see just how far these tales of justice have traveled. Now, let's get into it. The autumn rain in Bridgeport, Montana came down hard that Tuesday afternoon, drumming against the windows of Vanguard Martial Arts like impatient fingers. Inside, the air smelled of sweat, rubber mats, and the kind of testosterone-fueled confidence that came from too many easy wins. 23 students filled the main training floor, most of them teenagers and young adults dressed in crisp white GIs, their colored belts marking hierarchies as rigid as military rank. At the center of it all stood Kira Brennan, 24 years old, third-degree black belt, undefeated in regional competition for 3 consecutive years. She moved through the dojo like she owned the oxygen itself, her platinum blonde ponytail swinging with each sharp pivot. Her kicks snapped with the precision of a metronome. Her punches cut air like blades. Around her, younger students watched with the reverence usually reserved for celebrities, their eyes tracking every movement as if studying scripture. "Again!" Kira barked at a brown belt named Jason, who was nursing a bruised forearm after attempting and failing to block her last combination. "You're dropping your guard like an amateur." Jason reset his stance, jaw tight, pride clearly wounded. He came at her again with a front kick that telegraphed itself 3 seconds early. Kira slipped it, countered with a spinning back fist that stopped a millimeter from his temple and let him stumble past her into the wall padding. "Pathetic," she said, not even breathing hard. Laughter rippled through the room. Jason's face went crimson, but he bowed and returned to the line of students without a word. That was the culture here. Kira's culture. She didn't just train fighters, she built an audience for her dominance. Master Victor Reyes, the dojo's 62-year-old founder, watched from his office doorway with arms crossed and a frown that had been deepening for months. He'd built Vanguard on discipline and respect, but somewhere along the line, Kira had turned it into her personal theater. He'd let it go on too long. He knew that. But she brought in competition trophies, media attention, and paying students. So he watched, said nothing, and hated himself a little more each day. The front door chimed, every head turned. A woman stepped inside, shaking rain from a plain black jacket. She wore pale blue scrubs underneath, the kind that marked her as medical staff from somewhere nearby. Her hair was dark brown, pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her face carried the kind of calm that came from seeing too much to be rattled by much. She looked to be in her early 30s, average height, average build, utterly unremarkable in every way that mattered to people like Kira. She scanned the room, spotted a teenage girl sitting against the far wall, cradling her wrist, and walked toward her without acknowledging anyone else. "Emily?" the woman said gently, kneeling beside the girl. "I'm Jordan. Your mom called me. Let me see that wrist." Emily Preston, 16, with tear-streaked cheeks and a swollen left wrist, held it out carefully. Jordan Reyes, the nurse who'd been covering the evening shift at Bridgeport General Hospital when Emily's mother frantically called asking if someone could check on her daughter before the urgent care closed, examined the injury with practiced efficiency. "Probably a sprain," Jordan said softly, rotating the wrist with care. "But we'll wrap it and get you ice. You're going to be fine." "She's fine," Kira's voice cut across the room like a whip crack. "She just needs to toughen up." Jordan didn't look up. She pulled medical tape and a compression wrap from a small bag she'd brought. Sprains don't respond to toughness. They respond to rest and proper treatment. "I didn't ask for a medical lecture," Kira said, walking closer now, her footsteps deliberate. "This is a dojo, not a hospital. We train through pain here." Jordan finished wrapping Emily's wrist, checked the tension, then finally looked up at Kira. Her expression was neutral, almost bored. "She's 16. If she trains on this and it's a fracture, you're looking at permanent damage. That worth your ego?" The room went still. Students exchanged wide-eyed glances. No one talked to Kira Brennan like that. Not students, not parents, Definitely not some random nurse who walked in off the street. Kira's smile was ice wrapped in silk. "Excuse me?" Jordan stood, meeting Kira's eyes without flinching. "I said if you push her to train on an injury you haven't properly assessed, you could permanently damage a teenager's wrist. I know you heard me. The question is whether you care." Kira took another step forward, close enough now that the height difference became apparent. She had 3 inches on Jordan, and she used every bit of it. "You know what I think? I think you walked into the wrong room, nurse. This is where real athletes train, not where people like you hand out participation trophies and tell everyone they're special." Jordan picked up her bag. "Emily, keep that wrapped, ice it tonight, and have your mom take you to the clinic tomorrow for an x-ray. If it's just a sprain, you'll be fine in a few weeks." "She's not going anywhere," Kira said, moving to block Jordan's path to the door. "You don't get to walk in here, insult my training methods, and just leave." Jordan stopped. "Move. Make me." The room collectively held its breath. Phones started emerging from pockets. This was content gold. Kira Brennan about to humiliate some nobody nurse who'd made the fatal mistake of disrespecting her. Master Hayes stepped forward from his office. "Kira, that's enough." "No, Master, it's fine," Kira said, her eyes never leaving Jordan's face. "I think our guest here needs a lesson in respect. In understanding what real strength looks like." She gestured to the mat. "1 round. You and me. If you win, you walk out that door and we never speak again. When I win, you apologize to me and every student in this room for wasting our time." Jordan shook her head slowly. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here because a mother asked me to check on her daughter. I did that. Now I'm leaving." "Scared?" Kira's voice dripped with mockery. The students laughed on cue like a studio audience responding to a laugh track. "No," Jordan said simply. "Just tired and not interested in whatever this is." "This is you realizing you're out of your depth," Kira shot back. "Look at you, scrubs and sensible shoes, probably haven't thrown a real punch in your life. You're exactly the kind of soft, weak, civilian dead weight that wouldn't last 10 seconds in a real confrontation." Jordan's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then prove me wrong." Kira stepped onto the mat, gesturing broadly. "Come on, nurse. Show us what you've got. Or admit you're scared and apologize." The chant started small, just a few students at first, then spreading like wildfire through the group. "Scared, scared, scared, scared." Emily tugged at Jordan's sleeve. "You don't have to." Jordan set down her bag. The room erupted in cheers and jeers. Master Hayes closed his eyes, already seeing how badly this was about to go. Every phone in the room was recording now, positioned for the perfect angle to capture Kira's inevitable victory. Jordan stepped onto the mat, pulled her hair into a tighter ponytail, and faced Kira with the same calm expression she'd worn since walking in. 5-point sparring, Kira announced, loud enough for the phones to catch. "First to 5 clean strikes wins. Master Hayes will judge." She rolled her shoulders, bounced on her toes, fell into a perfect fighting stance. "Any questions, nurse?" "Just one," Jordan said quietly. "When this is over, will you let that girl rest her wrist?" Kira's smile was pure venom. "When this is over, you'll be too embarrassed to worry about anyone but yourself." Master Hayes stepped to the edge of the mat, his expression grim. "Keep it clean, controlled contact only." He looked at Kira specifically when he said it. She ignored him. "Ready?" Kira asked. Jordan didn't take a stance. She just stood there, hands loose at her sides, weight evenly distributed. It looked like she was waiting for a bus, not preparing to fight a 3rd-degree black belt. "Your funeral," Kira said. She attacked. The first combination came fast, jab, cross, roundhouse kick aimed at Jordan's ribs. Textbook form, competition tested, designed to overwhelm and intimidate. The students cheered. The phones tracked every movement. Jordan shifted her weight maybe 6 inches to the left. The punches cut through empty air. The kick swept past her side like she'd known its trajectory before Kira even threw it. Kira reset, annoyance flickering across her face. She came again, faster this time. Front kick, spinning back fist, another roundhouse. The kind of combination that had won her a dozen trophies. Jordan moved like water around rocks. No wasted motion, no dramatic blocks or counters. She just wasn't there when the strikes arrived. Each attack missed by the smallest possible margin, close enough that the breeze of passing limbs stirred her scrubs. The cheering faltered. Kira's breathing quickened. She attacked again and again, throwing everything she had. High kicks, low sweeps, punch combinations that should have overwhelmed any opponent through sheer volume and speed. Jordan made it all look choreographed, like she was dancing to music only she could hear. "Stand still," Kira snarled, frustration cracking through her confident veneer. Jordan said nothing. Her eyes tracked Kira's movements with the detached precision of someone reading a book they'd already finished. Master Hayes' expression had changed from grim to stunned. He'd seen a lot of fighters in 40 years of martial arts. He'd never seen anything like this. This wasn't karate or even mixed martial arts. This was something else entirely. Something designed not for points or trophies, but for much simpler mathematics. Stay alive. Make them not alive. Kira threw a wild haymaker, abandoning technique for raw power. Jordan moved inside the punch, redirected Kira's momentum with one hand against her extended arm, and swept her legs with a motion so economical it barely looked like movement at all. Kira hit the mat hard, the impact driving air from her lungs. The room went completely silent. Phones stopped moving. Students stared. Master Hayes' mouth had fallen open. Kira scrambled to her feet, face flushed with humiliation and rage. "You got lucky." Jordan still hadn't taken a fighting stance. "We can stop now." "No!" Kira charged, all pretense of control gone. She came like a freight train, throwing everything. Punches, kicks, elbows, knees, a wild barrage of attacks fueled by wounded pride. Jordan sidestepped, ducked, weaved, and when Kira overextended on a high kick, Jordan caught her ankle, controlled the momentum, and set her down on the mat again. Not gently, but not with the violence she could have used. It was like watching someone remove a dangerous object from a child's hands. Firm, necessary, but not cruel. Kira got up slower this time. Her chest heaved, sweat plastered blonde strands to her forehead. For the first time in 3 years, doubt flickered behind her eyes. "Where did you train?" Master Hayes asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jordan looked at him, started to answer. And someone screamed. The sound came from the far corner of the dojo, sharp and terrified. A 13-year-old boy named Marcus Delgado had been sitting against the wall, watching the sparring match. Now he was on his side, body rigid, eyes rolled back, limbs jerking in violent spasms. Jordan moved before anyone else processed what was happening. She crossed the room in seconds, dropped to her knees beside Marcus, and began issuing commands in a voice that carried the absolute authority of someone who'd given orders under fire. "Call 911 now. Someone get me something soft for under his head. A towel, a jacket, anything. Clear this space. Everyone back 3 feet. Move." The dojo responded before conscious thought could interfere. Students scrambled. Master Hayes grabbed his phone, dialing emergency services with shaking hands. Kira stood frozen on the mat, forgotten. Jordan positioned Marcus on his side, supported his head, checked his breathing. Her hands moved with practiced precision, assessing pupil response, checking for injuries. "How long has he been here training today?" 3 hours, someone stammered. "He was fine. He was just watching." "Did he hit his head?" "Any impacts during sparring?" "Not today. But yesterday, during throws, he said he was fine." Jordan's expression darkened. She checked Marcus's pulse, examined his eyes again with the small pen light she pulled from her scrub pocket. "He's showing signs of increased intracranial pressure. This isn't a seizure from overexertion. This is a delayed traumatic brain injury." Master Hayes relayed information to the 911 dispatcher, his voice cracking. "They're saying 10 minutes for the ambulance." "That might be too long," Jordan said, her hands never stopping their assessment. She kept Marcus on his side, monitored his breathing, and started a verbal countdown of his vital signs that suggested she was preparing for something worse than waiting. The seizure began to subside, but Marcus remained unconscious. Jordan checked his airway again, positioned him for optimal breathing, and looked up at the gathered students with an expression of controlled urgency. "Anyone know if he's on medication? Any medical conditions?" "His dad's a commander at Riverside Naval Station," a girl offered, her voice small. "Marcus doesn't have any conditions we know about." "His father's military?" Jordan's tone sharpened. "What's the station's distance from here?" Maybe 4 miles. Jordan pulled out her own phone, dialed a number from memory, and when someone answered, she spoke in a clipped professional cadence that belonged to a very different world than a civilian dojo. This is Reyes. I need a priority medical response at Vanguard Martial Arts, 847 Morrison Street, Bridgeport. 13-year-old male, suspected delayed TBI with acute symptoms, currently post-seizure and unconscious. Father is Commander Delgado, Riverside Naval Station. We need a corpsman team here faster than civilian EMS can respond. She listened for a second. Yes, I'm on scene. I'll maintain stabilization. Get them here. She hung up and returned her full attention to Marcus, whose breathing had become more labored. Jordan adjusted his position fractionally, kept monitoring his responses, and began speaking to him in a low, steady voice, even though he couldn't hear her. You're going to be fine, Marcus. Help is coming. Your dad's going to be here soon. Just keep breathing for me. 2 minutes later, long before any civilian ambulance could have arrived, the front door burst open and 3 men in Navy combat fatigue stormed in carrying medical gear that looked far more advanced than standard paramedic equipment. The lead corpsman, a 30-year-old senior chief with combat patches on his sleeves, took in the scene in one sweeping glance, saw Jordan kneeling beside Marcus, and stopped cold. His face went slack with recognition. Ma'am, Yito. The word came out somewhere between a question and a statement of disbelief. Chief Reyes? The dojo, which had been holding its collective breath, somehow found a way to hold it tighter. Jordan looked up at the corpsman, and for just a second something passed across her face. Acknowledgement, weariness, resignation. Then it was gone, replaced by professional focus. Senior Chief Hawkins, she said, her voice steady. Good to see you. Patient is 13-year-old male, approximately 90 pounds, sustained head impact during training yesterday that went unreported. Tonic-clonic seizure approximately 4 minutes ago, duration roughly 90 seconds. Currently unconscious but breathing, showing signs of increased intracranial pressure. Pupils were unequal and sluggish before the seizure. I've maintained airway and positioned for optimal breathing. Hawkins and his team moved with the smooth coordination of people who'd worked together in much worse conditions than a Montana dojo. They set up a portable monitor, established vital signs, prepared Marcus for transport. But Hawkins kept glancing at Jordan like he was seeing a ghost. Ma'am, I thought you were... We heard you retired. I did, Jordan said simply. I work at Bridgeport General now. Regular nursing. Regular hours. Regular, Hawkins repeated, like the word didn't quite fit in his mouth when applied to her. Another corpsman, younger, looked between them with growing confusion. Chief, do you know her? Hawkins' expression carried the weight of stories he clearly wasn't going to tell in present company. Yeah, petty officer, I know her, we all do. The front door opened again, and Commander Richard Delgado rushed in, still in his service dress uniform, his face the color of ash. Where's my son? He saw Marcus on the stretcher, saw the Navy medical team, and then his eyes found Jordan. He stopped like he'd hit a wall. Chief Reyes. Not a question, a statement loaded with history. Jordan nodded once. Commander, your son's being prepped for transport now. He's stable, but he needs a full neurological workup. The seizure indicates possible subdural hematoma from yesterday's training injury. Delgado crossed to his son, gripped his hand, and spoke to Hawkins in the clipped tones of someone barely maintaining control. Best facility? Bridgeport General has a solid neurology department, Jordan said before Hawkins could answer. But if you want military-grade care, Riverside Medical can have a neurosurgeon standing by before he arrives. I can make the call. Delgado looked at her, and something complicated moved behind his eyes. Gratitude, respect, and something that looked almost like awe. Please. Jordan made the call, gave precise medical details, ensured the receiving facility had everything ready. Then she stood back and let the corpsman team do their work. As they loaded Marcus onto the gurney, Delgado turned to Jordan. You saved his life. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't recognized the signs, his voice broke. He's going to be fine, Commander, Jordan said quietly. The team will take good care of him. As the Navy medical team carried Marcus out, Hawkins paused at the door and looked back at Jordan. Ma'am, just so you know, people still talk about Kandahar, about what you did there. Jordan's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went very far away for a second. That was a long time ago, Senior Chief. Respectfully, ma'am, not long enough that people forget. Then they were gone, and Jordan was left standing in a dojo full of students whose phones had captured everything. The sparring match, the seizure, the Navy response team, and especially that moment of recognition when senior military personnel had looked at a civilian nurse in scrubs and called her chief with the kind of respect usually reserved for legends. Master Reyes broke the silence first, his voice hoarse. "Who are you?" Jordan picked up her medical bag from where she'd set it down a lifetime ago. "I'm a nurse at Bridgeport General Hospital. That's all." "That's not all," Kira said, and for the first time since Jordan had arrived, her voice carried no mockery, only slowly dawning horror. "They called you chief. They recognized you. The commander knew you. What the hell are you?" Jordan turned to look at her, and in that moment, with proper context finally settling over the room like fallout, every student in the dojo could see what they'd missed before. The way Jordan moved wasn't civilian casual. It was the economy of someone who'd learned to conserve energy, because wasting it could mean death. The calm wasn't natural peace. It was the stillness of someone who'd seen horrors that made a spoiled black belt's insults feel like elevator music. The precision of her movements during the sparring match wasn't training. It was muscle memory carved by survival. "I was a Navy hospital corpsman," Jordan said quietly, "attached to special operations. I served 3 deployments in combat zones, worked field medicine in conditions you can't imagine, and retired 4 years ago with more decorations than I have wall space for. Now I work at a hospital and try very hard to live a quiet life." She looked around the room at all the phones still recording. "And people like you make that very difficult." The words landed like artillery shells. Students looked at their phones with growing expressions of sickness. They'd recorded themselves mocking a decorated combat veteran. They'd laughed while their champion bullied a woman who'd saved lives under fire. They'd turned it into entertainment. Kira's face had gone from flushed to pale. I didn't know." "No," Jordan said, her voice still calm, still level, but carrying an edge now that could cut glass. "You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You saw someone you decided was weak, and you chose cruelty." She picked up her bag. "Emily, remember what I said about the wrist. Master Reyes, you should have better oversight of your students' medical conditions. If Marcus complained about his head yesterday and still trained today, that's a systemic failure." She walked toward the door. This time, no one blocked her path. "Wait," Master Reyes called out. We need to." Jordan paused at the threshold, rain still drumming against the windows, the sound suddenly very loud in the silent dojo. "You need to decide what kind of school you're running," she said without turning around. "One that builds character or one that builds bullies? Because right now, you've got a 3rd-degree black belt who thinks strength is humiliation, and a room full of students who learn to laugh at it. Marcus almost died because someone ignored his injury. Emily's wrist is sprained because someone pushed her past safe limits, and I got harassed for doing my job." Now she looked back and her eyes were tired. "Fix it, Master Reyes, before someone else gets hurt." She walked out into the rain. The door closed behind her. And in the dojo, with every phone still recording, the students of Vanguard Martial Arts stood in silence and watched their social media empires begin to crumble around them. Because one of them had already posted the first video, and the internet was starting to see it. The video went live at 7:47 p.m., posted by a 17-year-old brown belt named Derek Matheson, who thought he was capturing comedy gold. He titled it, "Black Belt Destroys Random Nurse Who Talked Trash," and added 3 laughing emojis. Within 90 seconds, it had 27 views. Within 5 minutes, 200. By the time Jordan Reyes pulled her Honda Civic into the employee parking lot at Bridgeport General Hospital and killed the engine, the video had been shared 43 times and the comment section had transformed into a war zone. She sat in the car for a moment, rain streaming down the windshield, her hand still gripping the steering wheel. The adrenaline from the dojo was fading now, leaving behind the familiar hollow feeling that always followed these encounters. She'd left the military specifically to avoid this, the recognition, the reverence, the weight of a past that refused to stay buried. All she wanted was to work her shifts, help her patients, and go home to her quiet apartment where nobody knew what she'd done or who she'd been. But people like Kira Brennan made that impossible. Jordan grabbed her medical bag, locked the car, and headed inside through the staff entrance. The night shift was just beginning, and the ER waiting room held its usual collection of minor emergencies and major anxieties. She changed into a fresh set of scrubs in the locker room, pulled her hair back, and reported to the charge nurse's station. "Reyes," charge nurse Patricia Dominguez said, looking up from her tablet with tired eyes. "You're on trauma bay tonight. We've got a chest pain in 3, possible appendicitis in 5, and..." She paused, studying Jordan's face. "You okay? You look like you've already had a shift." "Long afternoon," Jordan said. "I'm fine." Patricia didn't look convinced, but she also didn't press. That was one of the things Jordan appreciated about her. She knew when to leave things alone. "All right, let me know if you need anything." Jordan dove into work, letting the familiar rhythms of the ER wash over her like white noise. Check vitals, assess symptoms, start IVs, coordinate with doctors, comfort frightened patients. It was simple, straightforward. No one here expected her to be anything other than competent and kind. By 9:15 p.m., the video had 17,000 views. By 10:30 p.m., it had been picked up by 3 regional news aggregator accounts with a combined following of 2 million people. Jordan had no idea. She was in Trauma Bay 2, helping stabilize a 50-year-old man with cardiac arrhythmia, when her phone started buzzing in her locker. She didn't hear it, didn't see the flood of notifications, didn't know that Derek Matheson's video had been quote-tweeted by a viral account with the caption, "Wait for it. This random nurse is actually a decorated Navy combat medic who served with SEAL teams." The black belt had no idea who she was messing with. The new context changed everything. People went digging, found old news articles from 4 years ago about a Navy hospital corpsman named Jordan Reyes, who'd been awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for treating wounded Marines under direct enemy fire in Kandahar province. Found a photograph of her in dress blues, looking 10 pounds lighter and 1,000 years older, standing beside a commanding officer whose face had been partially redacted for security reasons. Found testimonials from special operations personnel describing her as the toughest combat medic we ever worked with and the person you wanted in the field when everything went to hell. By midnight, the original video had 500,000 views, and the story had been picked up by military appreciation pages, veteran support groups, and at least one major news outlet. Kira Brennan's Instagram account, which had been public and curated for maximum exposure, began receiving comments that ranged from disgusted to outright threatening. "You mocked a war hero. She saved lives while you played dress-up in a dojo. You're everything wrong with martial arts culture. Pathetic bully picks on a woman who actually knows what real combat is." At 12:47 a.m., Kira made her account private. At 1:03 a.m., Vanguard Martial Arts' Facebook page was flooded with 1-star reviews and demands for accountability. At 1:15 a.m., Master Victor Hayes sat in his office staring at his computer screen with shaking hands, watching the video play for the 19th time, and realized his dojo was burning down around him. Jordan finished her shift at 2 a.m., exhausted but satisfied with the night's work. All her patients had been stabilized, transferred, or discharged. She'd helped save 2 lives and ease the suffering of a dozen others. It was good work, meaningful work, the kind that let her sleep. She changed back into her civilian clothes, grabbed her bag from her locker, and saw her phone screen lit up like a Christmas tree. 47 missed calls, 136 text messages, 3 voicemails from numbers she didn't recognize. Her stomach sank. She unlocked the phone and saw messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Former colleagues from the Navy, friends from her deployments, even her old commanding officer, Captain Rebecca Vasquez, now retired and living in Virginia. Vasquez's message was characteristically blunt. "Saw the video. You okay? Call me if you need to talk. Also, you still got it." Jordan scrolled through the messages with growing dread. Links to news articles, screenshots of social media posts, videos of people defending her, attacking the dojo, analyzing her movements during the sparring match with the kind of frame-by-frame scrutiny usually reserved for championship fights. She found the original video and watched it with clinical detachment, saw herself through the lens of strangers' phones, heard Kyra's mocking voice, saw the crowd's laughter, watched her own movements stripped of context and replayed in slow motion while strangers debated her training background. Then she saw the clip that changed everything. The Navy corpsman arriving, Senior Chief Hawkins's recognition, Commander Delgado's gratitude, and that damning moment when someone off camera asked, "Who is she?" And another voice answered, "That's Chief Reyes. She's a legend." Jordan closed the video and sat down on the locker room bench, suddenly very tired. The door opened and Patricia stuck her head in. "Hey, you're still here? I thought you'd left." She stopped, seeing Jordan's expression. "What's wrong?" Jordan held up her phone. "Remember that dojo call earlier? Someone posted it online. It's gone viral." Patricia's eyes widened. She pulled out her own phone, searched for a moment, and found the video in seconds. "Oh my God. Jordan, there are news articles about you. They're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero," Jordan said quietly. "I was just doing my job. Both jobs. That's all it ever was." "The internet doesn't see it that way." Patricia scrolled through comments, her expression shifting from surprise to anger. "That girl, Kyra, she was awful to you. People are furious." "I don't want them to be furious. I want them to forget about it." "Too late for that." Patricia looked up from her phone. "Jordan, this is everywhere. Military news sites, veteran pages, even mainstream media is picking it up. You're trending on Twitter." Jordan put her face in her hands. This was the nightmare scenario. The exact situation she'd spent 4 years trying to avoid. She'd left the Navy, moved to a small city where nobody knew her, taken a quiet civilian job, and built a life specifically designed to be unremarkable. And in one afternoon, because some spoiled martial artist couldn't handle being told no, all of that had been stripped away. "I need to go home," Jordan said. "Do you want me to walk you out, the parking lot?" "I'll be fine." She wasn't fine. She was exhausted, frustrated, and angry at herself for letting Kira bait her into that sparring match. She should have just left, should have ignored the insults, walked past the blocking, and let the whole thing go. But Emily Preston had needed help, and Jordan had never been good at walking away from people who needed help. She drove home through empty streets, the rain finally letting up to a light drizzle. Her apartment was a modest one-bedroom in a quiet complex on the north side of town. No roommates, no pets, just her and the careful silence she'd cultivated. She unlocked the door, dropped her bag, and was halfway to the bedroom when her phone rang. Captain Rebecca Vasquez. Jordan considered ignoring it, but Vasquez had never been the type to give up easily. She answered, "Ma'am." "Don't ma'am me, Reyes. I'm retired. It's Rebecca now." Vasquez's voice carried the same command presence it always had, but with an undertone of concern. "I saw the video. All of them, actually. There are at least 5 different angles floating around now." "It wasn't supposed to be a thing," Jordan said, sinking onto her couch. "I just went to check on a patient." "And you ended up demonstrating close-quarters combat techniques to a room full of civilians while a spoiled black belt tried to humiliate you." "Yeah, I caught that part." Vasquez paused. "You held back." "Of course I held back." "No, I mean you really held back. I've seen you work. What you did in that dojo wasn't even 10% of your capability. You could have put that girl in a hospital. She's 24 years old and stupid. Not dangerous, just mean." "Mean has consequences too," Vasquez said. "Have you seen what's happening to the dojo?" "I don't want to see it." "Jordan," Vasquez's voice softened. "You can't hide from this. It's too big now. The story is out there. Your service is out there. People want to know about the nurse who turns out to be a decorated combat medic. The Navy's Public Affairs Office has already been getting calls." Jordan's stomach twisted. "They can't release my information without my consent." "They won't. But that doesn't stop journalists from digging. Your Bronze Star citation is public record. Your name was in the Marine Corps Times 4 years ago. It's all out there if people look hard enough." "What do you want me to do, Rebecca? Hold a press conference? Go on the news and explain myself?" "I want you to be prepared," Vasquez said firmly. "This is happening whether you like it or not. The question is how you respond to it." Jordan leaned back against the couch cushions, staring at the ceiling. "I respond by going to work tomorrow and doing my job. Same as always." "And when reporters show up at the hospital?" "They won't." "Jordan, they won't," Jordan repeated more forcefully. "Because this will blow over in 48 hours. Something else will happen. Some other video will go viral, and people will forget about the nurse who sparred with a black belt." That's how the internet works. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. I hope you're right. But if you need anything, character references, someone to run interference, whatever, you call me. Understood? Understood. Thank you, Captain. Rebecca. Jordan managed a tired smile. Thank you, Rebecca. She hung up and sat in the dark apartment, listening to the silence. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications she didn't want to read. Outside, the city slept, unaware and unconcerned. And somewhere across town, in a dojo that was currently drowning in social media fury, Kira Brennan was probably having the worst night of her life. Jordan felt no satisfaction in that thought, no triumph, just weariness. She turned off her phone, went to bed, and tried to sleep. The next morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Jordan's phone, which she'd reluctantly turned back on at 6 a.m., immediately exploded with new notifications. The video had passed 2 million views. News outlets across Montana were running stories about the viral dojo confrontation. Bridgeport General Hospital's communications director had left her 3 voicemails asking her to please call back as soon as possible. Jordan got ready for her evening shift. She had the late schedule this week, and tried to mentally prepare for whatever was coming. She made coffee, ate a piece of toast she didn't taste, and watched the local morning news out of morbid curiosity. The story was the third segment, right after a piece about upcoming road construction and before the weather report. A viral video out of Bridgeport has sparked an online firestorm, the anchor said, her expression carefully neutral. The footage shows a confrontation at a local martial arts academy between a student instructor and a nurse who turned out to have an unexpected background. Channel 7's Marcus Torres has the story. The screen cut to the video, mercifully edited to show only the sparring match, not the earlier mockery, with a voiceover explaining the context. Then it showed Marcus Delgado being loaded into the ambulance, though his face was blurred. Finally, it cut to a reporter standing outside Vanguard Martial Arts. The dojo at the center of the controversy has not yet issued a public statement, the reporter said. But sources tell us the student instructor seen in the video has been suspended pending an internal review. As for the nurse, Jordan Reyes, she is a former Navy hospital corpsman who served with distinction in combat zones. The video has raised questions about bullying in martial arts culture and the respect owed to military veterans. Jordan turned off the TV. Her phone rang. Hospital Communications Director. She answered. This is Jordan. Ms. Reyes, this is Catherine Walsh from Communications. I'm sure you're aware of the video that's been circulating. I'm aware. We've been receiving media requests for interviews with you. The hospital's position is that we fully support our staff and are proud of your service to our country. However, we need to discuss how to handle this from a public relations standpoint. Can you come in early today, say noon? Jordan checked the time. It was 7:15 a.m. I can do that. Excellent. We'll meet in the administrative conference room. And Jordan, for what it's worth, what you did was incredibly brave, both at the dojo and during your service. I was just doing my job, Jordan said for what felt like the 100th time. Well, you do it exceptionally well. Jordan hung up and finished getting ready. She arrived at the hospital at 11:45 a.m., entering through the staff entrance to avoid any potential media presence at the front doors. The administrative wing was quiet, professional, designed to make people feel like serious work happened here. Catherine Walsh met her outside the conference room, a woman in her mid-50s with steel gray hair and the kind of composure that came from years of managing crises. Jordan, thank you for coming in early. Please, have a seat. Inside the conference room, 2 other people waited. Dr. Raymond Fisher, the hospital's chief medical officer, and Maria Gonzalez, the head of the nursing department. Ms. Reyes, Dr. Fisher said, standing to shake her hand, thank you for your service, both to our country and to this hospital. Jordan shook his hand, then Maria's, and sat down. I appreciate that, but I'm not sure why we need a meeting. I haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done anything wrong at all, Maria assured her. Quite the opposite. We're here to discuss how to protect you from media intrusion while also acknowledging what's happened. Catherine pulled up a tablet showing multiple news sites all running variations of the same story. The narrative is currently very favorable to you. You're being portrayed as a humble hero who was harassed and then saved a child's life. The dojo is being portrayed as an example of toxic culture. That's good for you, but it also means you're going to face intense scrutiny. I don't want scrutiny, Jordan said. I want to work my shifts and be left alone. We understand that, Dr. Fisher said gently. But the reality is that this story has momentum. We've had 3 different news stations request on-camera interviews with you. A veterans advocacy group wants to feature you in their newsletter. And he paused, exchanging glances with Catherine. Commander Delgado has asked to thank you publicly. Jordan's jaw tightened. How's Marcus? Stable, Maria said. They did surgery last night to relieve the pressure from a subdural hematoma. He's expected to make a full recovery. If you hadn't recognized the signs when you did, the outcome would have been very different. Then I'm glad I was there, but I don't need thanks. With respect, Catherine said carefully, it's not about what you need. It's about what this story represents. You're a symbol right now of military service, of quiet competence, of standing up to bullies. People are inspired by you. I'm not a symbol. I'm a nurse. You're both, Dr. Fisher said. And that's not a bad thing, Jordan. We're not asking you to become a celebrity or a spokesperson, but we do think you should consider allowing one interview, controlled on your terms, to tell your side of the story. Otherwise, the media will tell it for you. Jordan sat back in her chair, studying their faces. They meant well. She could see that. But they didn't understand what they were asking. Every interview, every public appearance, every acknowledgement pulled her further back into a past she'd worked hard to leave behind. The military had been necessary. She'd believed in the mission, served with honor, and done her duty. But it had also cost her pieces of herself she'd never get back, scars that didn't show on her body. Let me think about it, she finally said. Catherine nodded. That's fair. But Jordan, you should know, Vanguard Martial Arts has scheduled a press conference for 4 o'clock this afternoon. Master Hayes is expected to make a statement. You might want to watch it. Jordan left the hospital at 12:30 p.m. and drove to a coffee shop across town where nobody knew her. She ordered a black coffee, found a corner table, and pulled up the news on her phone. The story had evolved in just the few hours since morning. New angles had emerged, new details uncovered. Someone had found footage of Kira's previous competitions and created a side-by-side comparison with Jordan's movements in the dojo. The analysis pointed out the fundamental differences in their training. Kira fought for points and trophies. Jordan moved like someone avoiding death. The video had 800,000 views. Another account had compiled testimonials from Marines who'd served with Jordan, all speaking anonymously but with obvious reverence. She ran into fire to save us. I owe my life to Chief Reyes, toughest medic in the Corps. At 3:45 p.m., Jordan pulled up the live stream for Vanguard's press conference. A local news station was broadcasting it. Master Victor Hayes sat behind a table in what looked like the dojo's main office, flanked by a lawyer and looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Thank you all for coming, Hayes began, his voice strained. I want to address the incident that occurred at our facility 2 days ago. First and foremost, I want to apologize to Ms. Jordan Reyes. What happened to her in our dojo was unacceptable. She came to provide medical care to a student and was subjected to harassment and intimidation. That is not what Vanguard Martial Arts stands for, and I take full responsibility for allowing a culture to develop where such behavior was tolerated. He paused, gathering himself. The student instructor involved, Kira Brennan, has been permanently expelled from Vanguard Martial Arts. Additionally, we are conducting a full review of our policies regarding student safety, medical protocols, and instructor conduct. The fact that a young student sustained a head injury that went unreported is inexcusable. Ms. Reyes' intervention quite literally saved that boy's life, and for that, we are eternally grateful. Questions erupted from reporters. Hayes fielded them carefully, his lawyer occasionally leaning in to whisper advice. Yes, other students would face disciplinary action. Yes, the dojo would implement mandatory first aid training. No, he could not comment on potential legal action. Then a reporter asked, "Have you spoken to Ms. Reyes directly?" Hayes' expression crumpled slightly. "I have tried to reach her. She has not responded. I understand why. I failed her. I failed my students. I allowed someone to create an environment of cruelty disguised as strength, and a decorated veteran was humiliated because of it. If Miss Reyes is watching this," he looked directly into the camera, I am profoundly sorry. You deserved better. You deserved respect. And I will spend whatever time I have left trying to rebuild this school into something worthy of its name. Jordan closed the live stream. She sat in the coffee shop staring at her phone, feeling the weight of expectation she'd never asked for settling on her shoulders. The internet wanted her to be a hero. The hospital wanted her to be an inspiration. Master Reyes wanted her forgiveness. Commander Delgado wanted to thank her publicly. Everyone wanted something from her. All she'd wanted was to help a girl with a hurt wrist and go back to work. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Jordan Reyes? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Who's asking? My name is Jennifer Kwan. I'm a producer for Northern Lights News Network. We're preparing a segment on your story for tomorrow's broadcast. I was hoping you might be willing to speak with us on camera. I'm not interested in doing interviews. I understand, Kwan said smoothly. But I should tell you, we're running the segment either way. We have the viral footage, we have statements from military sources, and we have comments from the dojo. The only perspective we're missing is yours. Without your voice, people will fill in the gaps themselves. Jordan's grip tightened on the phone. Is that a threat? No, it's reality. You're a public figure now, whether you like it or not. The question is whether you want to control your narrative or let others control it for you. My narrative is simple. I'm a nurse. I did my job. That's all. With respect, Ms. Reyes, that's not all. You're a decorated combat veteran who served with Special Operations Forces in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. You saved lives under fire. You came home and continued saving lives in a different uniform. That's a powerful story. People deserve to hear it from you. Jordan closed her eyes. This was how it started. One interview, then another, then speaking engagements, veterans events, constant reminders of a past she'd tried to make peace with. She'd seen it happen to others, good people who became defined by their service, who could never move beyond their uniforms even after taking them off. I need time to think, Jordan said. Our broadcast is tomorrow at 6 p.m. I'll need your answer by noon. Here's my direct number. Jordan wrote it down and hung up. She left the coffee shop and drove aimlessly through Bridgeport, past the hospital, past the dojo, past the quiet neighborhoods where regular people lived regular lives. She ended up at Riverside Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the water, watching the late afternoon sun paint everything gold. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unlisted number. Miss Reyes, this is Commander Delgado. Marcus is awake and asking about you. He wants to say thank you. Would you be willing to visit? No cameras, no press, just a grateful father and son. Jordan stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back. Which room? Riverside Naval Medical Center was 20 minutes away. Jordan showed her ID at the front desk, received a visitor badge, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Commander Delgado met her outside room 412, still in uniform, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Chief Reyes, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. How is he? Recovering. The surgery went well. They're keeping him for observation, but the prognosis is excellent. Delgado's voice caught. Because of you. Because the medical team acted fast. Because you recognized what no one else did and called in the right people. Don't diminish that. He opened the door. He's been asking about you since he woke up. Marcus Delgado looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, his head wrapped in bandages. But his eyes were alert, and when he saw Jordan, he tried to sit up. Easy, she said, moving to his bedside. You just had brain surgery. Let's keep movement to a minimum. You saved my life, Marcus said, his voice rough. Dad told me, everyone told me. I helped. The doctors saved your life. Dad also told me you were a combat medic, that you worked with SEALs and Marines. Is that true? Jordan glanced at Commander Delgado, who gave a small nod of permission. I was a hospital corpsman attached to Special Operations. That was a few years ago. That's so cool, Marcus said, his teenage enthusiasm breaking through despite obvious exhaustion. And you took down Kiera? Everyone at the dojo said she's unbeatable. Nobody's unbeatable, Marcus, and it wasn't about beating anyone. It was about not getting hurt by someone who was being aggressive. She was being mean to you, Marcus said. I saw the video. Everyone's seen it. She got what she deserved. Jordan pulled up a chair. Can I tell you something? Sure. Kira didn't deserve what's happening to her. Not really. She made bad choices. She was cruel and arrogant, but she's also young and stupid. And now her entire life is being destroyed on the internet. That's not justice. That's just revenge with better marketing. Marcus frowned. But you didn't do anything wrong. No, I didn't, but that doesn't mean I'm happy about what happened to her. Real strength isn't about humiliating people. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Kira never learned that. Maybe she will now. Commander Delgado spoke from the doorway. That's a generous perspective. It's a tired one, Jordan said. I've seen enough people destroyed. I don't need to watch it happen again, even to someone who treated me badly. She stayed for 20 minutes, answering Marcus's questions about the military in terms carefully scrubbed of anything classified or traumatic, and then excused herself. Commander Delgado walked her to the elevator. Thank you, he said simply, for everything. Take care of your son, Commander, and make sure his coaches take head injuries seriously from now on. Already handled. I've had conversations with every instructor at that dojo. Things are changing. The elevator arrived, Jordan stepped inside and turned to face him. Chief Reyes, Delgado said, holding the door. One more thing. The Navy Times wants to run a story about you. They've reached out to public affairs. I can't stop them, but I can ask them to be respectful. Would you like me to do that? Jordan thought about Jennifer Kwan's phone call, about the news segment running tomorrow with or without her input, about Master Hayes' public apology, about the millions of people who'd watched her sparring match and drawn their own conclusions. Tell them I'll give one interview, she said quietly. One, on my terms. And then I'm done. I'm not a story. I'm not inspiration. I'm just someone who did her job. Delgado nodded slowly. I'll make sure they understand that. The elevator doors closed. Jordan drove back to her apartment as the sun set over Bridgeport, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. When she pulled into her parking spot, she saw someone sitting on the steps outside her building. Kira Brennan stood up as Jordan approached, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Please don't call the police, Kira said, her voice shaking. I just need 5 minutes, please. Jordan stopped 3 feet away, exhausted and wary. How did you find out where I live? I'm sorry. I know this is stalking. I know you don't want to see me, but I can't. Kira's voice broke. I can't fix this unless I talk to you. You can't fix this at all, Jordan said, not unkindly. What's done is done. My life is over, Kira whispered. My career, my reputation, everything. I've gotten death threats. My family won't talk to me. The Regional Martial Arts Board is investigating me, all because I was a bitch to the wrong person. Jordan unlocked her apartment building door. You were a bitch to the right person, someone who wouldn't actually hurt you. Be grateful for that. Are you going to press charges? For what? Being rude? No, I have better things to do. Kira followed her inside, desperate now. Then can you make a statement? Tell people it wasn't that bad? That you forgive me? Jordan turned to face her in the dim lobby. I can't do that, Kira, because it was that bad. You mocked me, humiliated a teenage girl with an injury, and created an environment where a 13-year-old boy almost died because he was too scared to report a head injury. Those are facts. I can't change them to make your life easier. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. Intent doesn't erase impact. Then what am I supposed to do? Kira's voice rose, echoing off the lobby walls. Just accept that my entire life is destroyed? Jordan met her eyes steadily. You're supposed to learn from it. You're supposed to become better than you were. You're supposed to look at what happened and ask yourself why you thought cruelty was strength, and then spend the rest of your life proving you learned the difference. That's what you're supposed to do. Tears streamed down Kira's face. I'm 24 years old. My career is over before it started. Your martial arts career might be over, but you're not dead. You're not in prison. You're not lying in a hospital bed with a brain injury. You have time to become someone different. Whether you use it or waste it is up to you. Jordan turned toward the stairs. Go home, Kira. Leave me alone. And for both our sakes, hope this blows over faster than it probably will. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, locked the door behind her, and stood in the dark living room with her back against the wood, finally alone. Her phone buzzed one more time. A message from Jennifer Kwan. I've set up the interview for tomorrow at 3 p.m. before our broadcast. We'll keep it respectful and brief. Thank you for trusting us with your story. Jordan looked at the message, at all the accumulated weight of a day that had started simple and spiraled into chaos, and made a decision she knew she'd probably regret. She would do the interview. She would tell her story once, on her terms, and then she would go back to work and hope the world found someone new to obsess over. But as she finally got ready for bed, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger than one viral video. Outside her window, Bridgeport slept. And somewhere in the digital darkness, the story continued to spread, evolving beyond her control, building towards something she couldn't yet see coming. The morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made everything feel too sharp, too exposed. Jordan woke at 5 a.m. out of habit, her body still running on military time even 4 years after discharge. She made coffee in the pre-dawn darkness, sat at her kitchen table, and pulled up her phone to discover that the story had metastasized overnight into something she barely recognized. The Navy Times had run their piece at midnight, a comprehensive profile that included interviews with former teammates, excerpts from her service record, and a detailed account of the Kandahar incident that had earned her the Bronze Star. Someone had leaked more than she'd authorized. The article described in vivid detail how she'd treated 4 critically wounded Marines while pinned down by enemy fire, how she'd performed emergency surgery in a bombed-out building with nothing but a headlamp and basic field equipment, how she'd kept all 4 men alive long enough for medevac to arrive. It was accurate. It was also deeply personal. And now 8 million people had read it. The comments section was a war zone of its own, veterans praising her, civilians calling her a hero, a smaller but vocal contingent questioning why she'd hidden her service, as if working a quiet civilian job was somehow dishonest. And threaded through it all, renewed fury at Kyra Brennan, at Vanguard Martial Arts, at anyone who'd ever disrespected a veteran. Jordan closed the article and checked her work email. 43 new messages since yesterday. Most were supportive, colleagues expressing admiration, patients thanking her, administrators offering resources. But 3 stood out. The first was from the hospital's legal department, requesting a meeting to discuss potential liability issues arising from off-site medical intervention. Translation: they were worried about lawsuits. The second was from a veterans advocacy organization inviting her to speak at their annual gala, 5-figure honorarium, black tie event, 500 attendees. The third was from an address she didn't recognize, with a subject line that made her stomach drop. You don't remember me. She opened it against her better judgment. Chief Reyes, you treated me in Kandahar in 2019. I was Lance Corporal Derek Williamson, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. You saved my life when I took shrapnel to the femoral artery. I've been sober for 3 years now, have a wife and daughter, and run a construction company in Ohio. I saw the video. I saw what that girl did to you. I want you to know that every Marine you ever treated would run through fire for you. We remember. We'll always remember. Semper Fi. Derek Williamson, Sergeant USMC, retired. Jordan read it 3 times, then closed her laptop and sat in the quiet kitchen as the sun began to rise. This was the cost of visibility. Not the interviews or the attention, but the weight of other people's gratitude. The burden of being remembered when all she wanted was to forget. At 2:30 p.m., Jordan arrived at Northern Lights News Network's Bridgeport studio. The building was modern glass and steel, designed to project authority and trustworthiness. Jennifer Kwan met her in the lobby, late 40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of professional warmth that put interview subjects at ease while extracting exactly what she needed. Ms. Reyes, thank you so much for agreeing to this, Kwan said, extending her hand. I promise we'll keep it brief and respectful. We've set up in Studio B, just you, me, and a single camera. No audience, no spectacle. Jordan followed her through security and down a hallway lined with photographs of previous broadcasts. What angle are you taking? The truth, Kwan said simply. Who you are, what happened, and why it matters. I've read your service record, the public parts anyway. I've spoken to people who know you. The story I want to tell is about quiet competence in a world that rewards loud performance, about someone who's earned respect the hard way and doesn't need to demand it. That sounds suspiciously flattering. Quan smiled. It's only flattering if it's not true. Is it true? I'm just a nurse who used to be a corpsman, that's all. Then that's what we'll show. Studio B was intimate. 2 chairs, soft lighting, a backdrop of neutral blue. A single camera operator waited beside his equipment, checking focus. Jordan sat down, declined the offer of makeup, and waited while they clipped a microphone to her collar. We'll start with basics, Quan said, settling into the opposite chair. Then move into the dojo incident, then your background. If anything feels too invasive, just say so and we'll move on. Ready? Jordan nodded. The camera's red light blinked on. I'm here with Jordan Reyes, Quan began, her voice shifting into broadcast mode. Miss Reyes, you've become the center of a viral story this week. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened? Jordan kept her voice level, factual. I went to Vanguard Martial Arts to check on a patient, a teenage girl with a wrist injury. While I was there, I was challenged to spar by one of the instructors. During that encounter, a young student had a medical emergency. I provided care until professional medical services arrived. That's the summary. The video shows more than just a sparring match. It shows you being mocked and pressured. It shows a misunderstanding that escalated unnecessarily. You're being generous to someone who treated you very poorly. Jordan met Quan's eyes. Being generous doesn't cost me anything, and I've seen enough real cruelty to know the difference between someone being malicious and someone being stupid. Kira Brennan was stupid. She made bad choices, but I'm not interested in destroying her life over it. Quan shifted gears. Your service record indicates you deployed 3 times to combat zones with Special Operations Forces. Can you talk about that experience? I was a Navy hospital corpsman. I provided medical support to Marines and other personnel in forward operating areas. The work was challenging but necessary. You're being modest. The Bronze Star citation describes you treating multiple casualties under direct enemy fire. Jordan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I did my job in difficult circumstances. So did everyone else I served with. I'm not special because of it. But you are skilled because of it. The way you moved in that dojo, people with military experience have analyzed the footage. They say you demonstrated combat-level situational awareness and defensive techniques. I was trained to survive and to help others survive. That training doesn't disappear just because I'm not in uniform anymore. Does it bother you that your military background is now public knowledge? You've kept a low profile since retiring. For the first time, Jordan paused. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge of weariness. Yes, it bothers me. I left the military because I wanted a different life. I wanted to help people without the weight of combat hanging over everything. I wanted to be Jordan the nurse, not Chief Reyes the decorated veteran. But I also understand that once information is public, you can't put it back in the box. So I'm here, answering questions, trying to provide context so people understand that I'm not a hero or a symbol. I'm just someone trying to do good work and live quietly. Quan leaned forward slightly. What would you say to other veterans who might be struggling with similar issues? Being defined by their service, unable to move forward? Jordan considered the question carefully. I'd say your service matters. What you did matters. But it doesn't have to be the only thing that defines you. You can be proud of your past and still build a different future. The skills you learned, discipline, resilience, the ability to function under pressure, those translate to civilian life. You just have to give yourself permission to be more than your uniform. And what about the young people watching this? What would you want them to learn from what happened? That strength isn't about intimidation. It's not about proving you're better than someone else or making them feel small. Real strength is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's helping people who need help even when it's inconvenient. It's doing the right thing when no one's watching and no one will thank you for it. Jordan's voice softened. Kira Brennan thought strength meant never backing down. But the strongest thing I did that day wasn't sparring with her. It was recognizing that a kid needed help and acting on it. That's what I want young people to understand. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering her transition to civilian life, her work at the hospital, her perspective on the viral nature of the incident. Quan was skilled. She pushed enough to get substantive answers, but knew when to back off. When they finally wrapped, Jordan felt drained but also strangely relieved. That was excellent, Quan said as the camera operator packed up equipment. Really powerful. We'll run it tonight at 6. You're welcome to watch from here if you'd like. I'll watch from home, Jordan said, removing the microphone. But thank you for keeping your word. It was respectful. You made it easy. Quan walked her to the elevator. Off the record? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've interviewed generals, politicians, celebrities. You're one of the most genuine people I've ever sat down with. Whatever happens next, I hope you find the quiet life you're looking for. Jordan left the studio and drove back to her apartment through afternoon traffic. She had 3 hours before her shift started at the hospital. She should eat, rest, prepare for a long night. Instead, she found herself driving past Vanguard Martial Arts. The dojo looked abandoned. The front windows were covered with brown paper. A sign on the door read, "Closed until further notice." Someone had spray-painted "Bullies" across the brick facade in red letters. Jordan felt a twist of something complicated. Not quite sympathy, but an acknowledgement of how quickly everything could fall apart. Her phone rang. Hospital number. "This is Jordan." "Jordan, it's Patricia." The charge nurse's voice was tight with controlled panic. "We have a situation. There's a protest forming outside the main entrance." "A protest? For what?" "For you." About 30 people showed up an hour ago with signs supporting veterans and demanding the hospital honor our heroes. They're not violent, but they're blocking the entrance and some patients can't get through. Admin wants you to come in through the staff entrance and avoid the front entirely. Jordan checked her watch. 3:47 p.m. "I'm not scheduled until 7. "I know, but they're asking for you by name. Some of them are veterans. They want to thank you in person. It's turning into a media circus. 2 news vans just arrived. Tell them I appreciate the support, but I'd prefer they go home." "We tried that. They're saying they won't leave until they see you." Jordan closed her eyes, gripping the steering wheel. This was spiraling beyond her control. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. She pulled into the hospital's staff parking lot and entered through the back, hoping to reach administration without encountering the crowd. But the moment she stepped into the main corridor, she heard the chanting from outside. "Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan." "Doctor." Fisher met her halfway to his office, his expression grim. "Miss Reyes, I'm sorry about this. We're trying to disperse them peacefully, but some are claiming they have a right to free assembly. Hospital security can only do so much." "What do you want me to do?" "Honestly, I think you should make a brief appearance. Thank them, ask them to leave, and go back to work. If you don't, this could go on for hours and we have patients who need access." Jordan looked through the lobby windows at the crowd outside. Most were older, many wearing Veterans Organization caps or military unit shirts. They held signs reading, "Respect our heroes," and "Jordan Reyes equals American hero," and "Thank you for your service." It was well-intentioned. It was also exactly what she didn't want. 5 minutes, she said. Then they leave. Dr. Fisher nodded and spoke into his radio. "Security, we're bringing Ms. Reyes to the front entrance. Clear a path, but keep it controlled." Jordan walked through the lobby, past staring patients and staff, toward the automatic doors. The moment the crowd saw her, the chanting intensified. Cameras swung in her direction. Someone started clapping, and it spread like a wave. She stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. The crowd surged forward. Security held them back, but barely. An older man in a Vietnam veteran's cap pushed to the front, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for showing people what service really means." Jordan raised her hands, asking for quiet. It took 30 seconds for the noise to die down enough for her to speak. "I appreciate this," she said, projecting her voice. "I really do. But you're blocking hospital entrances. There are sick people who need to get inside, people coming for chemotherapy, for dialysis, for emergency care. Whatever you think you're honoring me for, the best way to do it is to step aside and let them through." "We just want to thank you," someone shouted. "You have, and I'm grateful. But I'm also a nurse, and my job is to help patients. Right now, you're preventing me from doing that job. So please, go home. Tell your families you care about veterans. Volunteer at a VA hospital. Donate to service organizations. Those things matter more than standing outside my workplace." A woman in her 60s pushed forward, her eyes fierce. That girl disrespected you. She disrespected all of us. She made a mistake, Jordan said firmly, and she's paying for it. But revenge isn't justice, and public humiliation isn't honor. If you want to support veterans, support the ones who are struggling, the ones with PTSD, the ones who are homeless, the ones who can't find work. I don't need your support. I have a job, a home, and a good life. There are veterans who don't. Help them. The crowd murmured, uncertain. Then the Vietnam veteran who'd spoken first stepped back and removed his cap. She's right. We should go. Others followed his lead, slowly dispersing. News cameras captured it all. Jordan standing alone outside the hospital, asking people to leave, redirecting their energy toward more productive causes. Within 10 minutes, the entrance was clear. Dr. Fisher appeared at her elbow. That was impressive. That was exhausting. Jordan turned to go inside, but a commotion near the parking lot made her stop. A black SUV with government plates had pulled up to the curb. Two men in suits emerged, followed by a woman in Navy service dress blues whose rank insignia identified her as a Rear Admiral. Jordan's stomach dropped. Rear Admiral Sarah Kincaid had been her commanding officer during her second deployment, the architect of the medical support structure that had kept special operations teams alive in some of the most hostile territory on Earth. She was brilliant, demanding, and utterly terrifying, and she was walking directly toward Jordan. "Chief Reyes," Kincaid said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Jordan came to attention instinctively. "Ma'am?" At ease, Kincaid stopped 3 feet away, her eyes scanning Jordan with the precision of a surgical strike. "I saw the video. I read the Navy Times article. I've spent the last 2 days fielding calls from the Pentagon, the Secretary of the Navy, and half the media outlets in the country. You've created quite a situation." "I didn't intend to, ma'am." "Intent is irrelevant. Impact is what matters." Kincaid gestured toward the hospital. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Dr. Fisher, looking like a man who'd suddenly found himself in a situation far above his pay grade, offered his office. They walked in tense silence, Jordan, Kincaid, and her 2 aides, through corridors where staff tried very hard not to stare. Once inside Fisher's office with the door closed, Kincaid dismissed her aides and turned to Jordan. "Sit." Jordan sat. Kincaid remained standing, hands clasped behind her back. "The Navy has a problem. Specifically, you've become a symbol of something we didn't anticipate. Recruitment is down, retention is struggling. We've been trying to figure out how to connect with younger generations who don't see military service as valuable. Then you appeared in a viral video demonstrating precisely the kind of competence and composure we want people to associate with Navy medicine. And you did it while being humble, professional, and effective." "Ma'am, I'm retired. I'm aware, which is why I'm here to ask, not order." Kincaid's expression softened fractionally. "The Navy would like you to participate in a recruiting campaign, not full-time, not even regularly. Just a few appearances, some promotional materials, maybe a speaking engagement at the Naval Academy. In exchange, we'd provide support, legal protection from media intrusion, assistance managing your public profile, and a consulting fee that would be substantial." Jordan shook her head. "I left the Navy because I wanted out of this life, ma'am. I can't go back." "I'm not asking you to go back. I'm asking you to help the people who are still in it. Do you know how many young corpsmen watched that video and felt proud to be in your profession? Do you know how many potential recruits saw what you're capable of and thought, maybe I could do that? They saw a 30-second sparring match that doesn't represent what the job actually is. They saw competence under pressure. They saw someone who trained hard, served honorably, and transitioned successfully to civilian life. That's the story, Jordan. Not the combat, not the medals, the fact that you made it through and came out whole." Kincaid leaned against the desk. "I know you want quiet. I respect that. But you have an opportunity to shape how this generation understands service. That's worth something." Jordan looked at her former commanding officer, the woman who'd once ordered her into situations where the survival rate was theoretical, and felt the familiar weight of duty settling on her shoulders. "I need time to think about it," she said finally. "You have 48 hours. After that, the Navy will make a statement with or without your cooperation. I'd prefer it be with." Kincaid stood, straightened her uniform, and walked to the door. Then she paused. Off the record, I'm proud of you. What you did in Kandahar, what you've done since, you represent the best of what we try to build. Don't let anyone make you ashamed of that. Then she was gone, leaving Jordan alone in Dr. Fisher's office with a decision that felt impossible. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Reyes, this is Kira Brennan. I know you told me to leave you alone, but something's happened. Someone leaked my address. I've had people outside my apartment all day. One of them threw a brick through my window. The police won't do anything. I don't know who else to call. Jordan stared at the message. Every instinct told her to ignore it, to let Kira deal with the consequences of her actions, but she'd meant what she'd told the crowd. Revenge wasn't justice. She typed back, "Are you safe right now?" The response came immediately. "I'm at a friend's house, but I can't go home. I don't know what to do." Jordan closed her eyes, already regretting what she was about to offer. "Give me the address. I'll meet you in 20 minutes. She left the hospital through the staff entrance, ignoring Patricia's concerned questions about whether she was still working her shift. The address Kira provided was a small house in a residential neighborhood 15 minutes away. Jordan pulled up to find Kira sitting on the front steps, looking like she'd aged a decade in 3 days. "Why did you come?" Kira asked as Jordan approached. "Because this has gone too far." Jordan sat down beside her, maintaining careful distance. "What happened?" "Someone posted my address on Reddit, then Twitter, then everywhere. Within hours, people started showing up. Most just yelled at me from the street, called me a bully, a disgrace. But tonight, someone threw a brick. The note attached said I deserved worse." Kira's voice was hollow. "My landlord is evicting me. Says I'm creating a safety hazard for other tenants. I have 72 hours to move out." "Have you talked to police?" "They took a report. Said there's nothing they can do unless someone makes a direct threat. Apparently destroying property while calling me names doesn't qualify." Jordan pulled out her phone and made a call. When Captain Vasquez answered, she got straight to the point. "Rebecca, I need a favor. Do you still have contacts at the FBI's cyber division?" "Some. Why?" "Someone's being targeted with harassment and property damage stemming from the viral incident. It's escalating. I need help de-escalating before someone gets hurt." Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "This is about the girl who harassed you, isn't it?" "Yes." "Jordan, she brought this on herself. And now it's become something else. This isn't justice. This is mob mentality. I need it stopped. You have a bigger heart than most people would in your situation. Give me the details. I'll make some calls." Jordan provided the information, then hung up and looked at Kira. "You're going to get a call from someone in law enforcement. They'll help coordinate with local police to increase patrols and track down whoever's organizing the harassment. But Kira, you need to understand something. This doesn't make us friends. This doesn't erase what happened. I'm doing this because what's happening to you is wrong, not because I forgive you." "I understand," Kira said quietly. "And for what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly. I've had 3 days to think about who I've been and what I've done, and I hate that person. I don't expect you to believe that, but it's true." Jordan stood to leave. "Then use this as a catalyst. Become someone different, someone better, and stay away from me." She drove back to her apartment as night fell over Bridgeport. The interview would air in 90 minutes. Rear Admiral Kincaid wanted an answer in 48 hours. Kira's life was imploding. The hospital was fielding media requests. Veterans were organizing rallies. And somewhere in the background, Jordan's carefully constructed quiet life was burning to the ground. She poured a glass of water, sat on her couch, and turned on the television. At 6 p.m., her face appeared on the screen. Jennifer Kwan's interview had been edited to perfection. Tight, focused, emotionally resonant without being manipulative. Jordan watched herself talk about service, strength, and the difference between pride and performance. She sounded calm, measured, reasonable. The broadcast ended with Kwan's voiceover. Jordan Reyes asked to be left alone, but her story raises important questions about how we treat veterans, how we define strength, and what we owe to those who serve quietly. Perhaps the greatest respect we can show her is to honor that request and to learn from her example. Jordan turned off the television. Her phone exploded with notifications. Then it rang. Hospital number again. Jordan, it's Patricia. You need to turn on channel 4. Now. Jordan switched channels. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Former Vanguard instructor in critical condition after apparent suicide attempt. The anchor's face was grave. We're receiving reports that Kira Brennan, the martial arts instructor at the center of the viral dojo confrontation, was found unconscious in her vehicle approximately 30 minutes ago. Emergency responders transported her to Bridgeport General Hospital, where she is currently in critical condition. The incident is being investigated as a possible suicide attempt. We'll bring you more information as it becomes available. Jordan's blood went cold. She grabbed her keys and ran. Jordan's Civic tore through red lights she barely registered, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The hospital was 12 minutes away in normal traffic. She made it in 7, pulling into the emergency bay with enough force that the tires screeched against asphalt. She abandoned the car in a no-parking zone and sprinted through the automatic doors into controlled chaos. The ER was in full crisis mode. Patricia stood at the nurse's station coordinating with 2 residents while a trauma team prepped Bay 1. She saw Jordan and her expression shifted from professional focus to something closer to relief mixed with dread. "She's in Bay 1, Patricia said before Jordan could ask. "Carbon monoxide poisoning. She was found in her car in a closed garage with the engine running. Neighbor heard the motor and called it in. Paramedics got there in time, but it's bad." Jordan pushed past her toward the trauma bay. Dr. Raymond Fisher intercepted her 3 feet from the door. "Jordan, you can't go in there." "The hell I can't. You're not on duty. You're personally involved. And frankly, you being in that room would compromise treatment." Fisher's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Dr. Martinez is handling it. She's excellent. Let her work." Jordan forced herself to stop, to breathe, to think like a medical professional instead of someone spiraling into guilt. "What's her status?" Carboxyhemoglobin level was 42% when she arrived. "We've got her on high-flow oxygen, started hyperbaric protocol. She's unconscious but stable. If we can prevent neurological damage in the next few hours, prognosis is decent." "Was there a note?" Fisher's expression darkened. "Police found one. I haven't read it, but officers are waiting to talk to whoever responds as next of kin. Her parents are driving in from Billings, 3 hours out." Jordan stepped back, letting the wall support her weight. This was her fault. Not directly, but the chain of causation was clear enough. She'd stood on those steps 2 hours ago and told Kira to deal with the consequences. She'd helped with the harassment situation, but then walked away. And now Kira had tried to erase herself rather than face what her life had become. "I need to see the note," Jordan said. "That's evidence in a potential criminal investigation. I need to see it." Jordan's voice carried the kind of authority that came from years of making life or death decisions under pressure. "Because if it says what I think it says, this isn't just about Kira anymore." Fisher studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, a Bridgeport police detective named Marcus Holloway appeared with a sealed evidence bag containing a single piece of paper covered in Kira's handwriting. "I shouldn't be showing you this," Holloway said, holding it up so Jordan could read through the plastic. "But Doctor, Fisher says you might have context that helps us understand what happened." Jordan read in silence. "I can't live with what I've become. Everyone was right. I'm a bully, a disgrace, someone who hurt people to feel powerful. Jordan Reyes tried to help me tonight, and I realized I don't deserve help. I don't deserve forgiveness. The world is better off without people like me in it. I'm sorry to everyone I hurt. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to fix it. This is the only way to make it stop." The words hit Jordan like physical blows. She'd told Kira to become better. Kira had heard, "You're not worth saving." "She called me tonight," Jordan said quietly. "Told me she was being harassed. I helped arrange police protection and told her to stay away from me. 2 hours later, she did this." Holloway's eyes sharpened. "You're saying you think your conversation triggered this?" "I'm saying I told someone who was clearly in crisis to deal with it alone. I was so focused on maintaining boundaries that I didn't see how close to the edge she was." "Miss Reyes, with respect, this young woman harassed you, mocked you, and created a situation that's turned your life upside down. You don't owe her psychological counseling." "No," Jordan agreed, "but I'm a medical professional. I'm trained to recognize when someone is in acute distress. And I missed it because I was angry. Fisher put a hand on her shoulder. Jordan, stop. You're not responsible for someone else's mental health crisis. Kira made a choice. A terrible choice, but hers. Before Jordan could respond, Patricia called out from the nurse's station. Dr. Fisher, we have a problem. There's a news van pulling into the parking lot. Someone leaked that Kira's here. How the hell? Fisher bit off the curse and turned to Holloway. Can you control this? I can keep them out of the hospital. I can't stop them from reporting what they know. The doors burst open, and a man in his 50s with Kira's bone structure came running in, followed by a woman who looked like she'd been crying for hours. Where's my daughter? Where's Kira? Dr. Martinez emerged from Trauma Bay 1, pulling off her gloves. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, I'm Dr. Martinez. Your daughter is stable. We're treating her for carbon monoxide poisoning. She's unconscious but responding to treatment. Mrs. Brennan collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. He held her up and looked at Martinez with eyes that had seen the worst thing a parent could imagine. Can we see her? In a few minutes. We need to get her transferred to the hyperbaric chamber first. Martinez glanced at Jordan, recognizing her from hospital meetings. She's in good hands. Mr. Brennan followed Martinez's gaze, and his expression changed when he saw Jordan. Recognition, then something harder. You're her. The nurse from the video. Jordan straightened. Yes. This is your fault. His voice cracked with rage and grief. My daughter made a stupid mistake, and you destroyed her life. You and everyone else who turned her into a villain for entertainment, and now she's... He couldn't finish. Mr. Brennan, Fisher started. Don't, Jordan said quietly, cutting him off. She looked directly at Kira's father. You're right. I could have handled it better. I should have seen how much pressure she was under. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Mrs. Brennan screamed, pulling away from her husband. Sorry doesn't bring my baby back from whatever hell she's in right now. You people turned a 24-year-old girl into a monster and then acted surprised when she couldn't take it anymore. Security appeared, ready to intervene, but Jordan shook her head. Let them be angry. They've earned it. She walked past the Brennans, past Fisher's protests, out into the parking lot where a news crew was indeed setting up. The reporter saw her coming and immediately started shouting questions. Ms. Reyes, can you comment on Kira Brennan's suicide attempt? Is it true you spoke with her earlier tonight? Do you feel responsible for what happened? Jordan stopped 10 feet from the cameras. I have one statement. What happened to Kira Brennan is a tragedy that should never have occurred. She made mistakes. So did I. So did everyone who turned a stupid confrontation into a social media crusade. A young woman nearly died tonight because our culture treats public humiliation as entertainment and calls it justice. If you care about preventing this from happening again, stop feeding the machine that caused it. Stop clicking. Stop sharing. Stop treating real people's worst moments as content. That's all I have to say. She turned and walked back inside before they could ask follow-ups. Patricia was waiting near the entrance. That's going to be on every channel in an hour. I know. Jordan pulled out her phone and called the one person she knew could actually do something about what was happening. Rear Admiral Kincaid answered on the second ring. Chief Reyes, I wasn't expecting to hear from you this quickly. Ma'am, I need the Navy's legal resources. A civilian is in critical condition because of harassment stemming from the viral incident. I need someone to investigate who organized the doxing campaign and hold them accountable. I need it to be public, and I need it to send a message. Kincaid was silent for 3 seconds. Are you asking the Navy to involve itself in civilian law enforcement? I'm asking the Navy to protect one of its own from a campaign of targeted harassment that spiraled into attempted manslaughter. The people who posted Kira Brennan's address knew what they were doing. They weaponized a mob. That's not free speech. That's incitement. And you want this because she's 24 years old and she made stupid decisions that didn't deserve a death sentence. Because I told the world that revenge isn't justice, and then I stood by while it happened anyway. Because if the Navy wants me to be a symbol of their values, those values need to include protecting people from mob violence. Kincaid exhaled slowly. I'll make calls. But Jordan, you need to understand this is going to make you even more visible. People will accuse you of defending your attacker. They'll say you're weak. Let them. I'm not doing this for my image. I'm doing it because it's right. Very well. I'll have our Judge Advocate General's office coordinate with the FBI. Expect movement within 24 hours. Kincaid paused. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call, even if it costs you. Jordan hung up and returned to the ER. Dr. Martinez was updating the Brennans on Kira's transfer to the hyperbaric chamber. Mrs. Brennan was calmer now, exhaustion replacing rage. Mr. Brennan saw Jordan approaching and his jaw tightened, but he didn't explode again. How is she? Jordan asked Martinez. Neurologically responsive. We're seeing good signs. The next 12 hours will tell us more, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Jordan looked at the Brennans. I meant what I said. I'm sorry. Not for defending myself or for what happened at the dojo, that was real. But I'm sorry for not seeing how badly she was struggling. I should have done more. Mrs. Brennan's eyes were hollow. Why do you even care? She was horrible to you. Because I know what it's like to carry weight you can't put down. And I know what happens when people decide you're not worth saving. Your daughter made mistakes, but she's not irredeemable. She deserves a chance to become better. The internet doesn't think so, Mr. Brennan said bitterly. They think she deserves to suffer. The internet is wrong. Jordan pulled out her phone and showed them the message she'd just sent to Jennifer Kwan at Northern Lights News. I'm going on record tomorrow asking people to stop the harassment. I'm going to make it very clear that what's happening to Kira is unacceptable. It won't fix everything, but it might slow the bleeding. Mrs. Brennan started crying again, but this time with something that looked like hope. Why would you do that for her? Because someone has to break the cycle. It might as well be me. Jordan left them there and went to find Patricia. The charge nurse was in the break room, staring at her phone with an expression of deep concern. You need to see this, Patricia said, turning the screen toward Jordan. It was a Twitter thread that had started 3 hours ago and now had over 50,000 retweets. The original post was from an account called at Justice for Veterans. Jordan Reyes stood up for what's right. Kira Brennan tried to destroy her. Now Brennan's facing consequences, and suddenly Jordan's defending her? This is Stockholm Syndrome. Don't let a bully manipulate you into feeling guilty at Jordan Reyes_RN. The replies were vicious. People accusing Jordan of being weak, of betraying veterans, of enabling bullies. A counter-movement had already formed. People who thought Jordan's compassion was actually cowardice in disguise. They're eating each other alive, Patricia said quietly. The people who supported you 3 days ago are now attacking you for not being vengeful enough. And the people who hated you are using this to say you're manipulative. Jordan scrolled through the thread, watching her reputation fracture in real time. Then she saw something that made her stomach drop. A reply from an account with a military insignia profile picture. Real warriors don't forgive enemies. Jordan Reyes is a disgrace to everyone who served. She should have let that girl face justice. Underneath it, hundreds of agreeing replies. This is insane, Jordan whispered. Her phone rang. Captain Vasquez. Turn on CNN, Vasquez said without preamble. Now. Jordan found a television in the break room and switched channels. A panel discussion was already in progress. The chyron reading, Viral Nurse Defends Attacker, Compassion or Complicity. 4 talking heads argued over each other about whether Jordan's defense of Kira was admirable or pathological. A military analyst claimed it undermined discipline. A psychologist suggested trauma bonding. A social media expert said it was a calculated PR move. They're dissecting you like a lab specimen, Vasquez said over the phone. And the worst part? They're doing it without any actual facts. Nobody knows what you said to Kira. Nobody knows what led to the suicide attempt. But that's not stopping them from building narratives. How do I stop this? You don't. You write it out and hope people get bored, which they will, eventually. Something else will come along. A celebrity scandal, a political crisis, a natural disaster. You'll fade into background noise. And until then, you keep your head down and remember that internet outrage has the lifespan of a mayfly. This feels enormous right now, but in 2 weeks you'll be forgotten. That's both the blessing and the curse of viral fame. Jordan hung up and sat in the break room, surrounded by the hum of hospital machinery and the distant sound of trauma bays saving lives. This was supposed to be simple. She'd helped a patient, defended herself, and gone back to work. But every action had metastasized into something uncontrollable, a runaway chain reaction where even her attempts at decency were being weaponized. Patricia sat down beside her. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Kira was awful to you, but she's a human being. She deserves a chance to survive this. The internet doesn't agree. The internet is a mob in digital clothing. It doesn't think, it just reacts. Patricia squeezed her shoulder. You're one of the best nurses I've ever worked with. Don't let strangers who've never met you convince you otherwise. At 11 p.m., Jordan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Reyes, this is Special Agent Diana Frost with the FBI's Cyber Crimes Division. Admiral Kincaid's office reached out. I've been authorized to investigate the harassment campaign against Miss Brennan. I'll need to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Jordan replied immediately with her contact information and availability. Within 20 minutes, Agent Frost called and walked her through the timeline. When Kira's address was first posted, which accounts amplified it, what platforms were used to coordinate harassment. The conversation was technical, precise, and deeply unsettling in its revelation of how organized the campaign had been. This wasn't organic mob action, Frost said. Someone with technical knowledge deliberately escalated this. They knew exactly which forums to target, which hashtags to use, which influencers to ping. This was coordinated. Can you find who did it? We're working on it. Digital forensics takes time, but we've already identified 3 accounts that appear to be the primary instigators. 2 are using VPNs and anonymous email addresses. The third, Frost paused. The third is registered to a student at Vanguard Martial Arts. Jordan's blood went cold. Which student? I can't disclose that yet, but I wanted you to know this might be closer to home than anyone thought. At midnight, Jordan finally left the hospital. Kira was stable in the hyperbaric chamber. Her parents were camped in the family waiting room. The media had mostly dispersed, chasing newer stories. Jordan drove home through empty streets, parked in her usual spot, and climbed the stairs to her apartment with legs that felt like lead. She unlocked the door and found Master Victor Hayes sitting in the hallway outside her apartment. He stood when he saw her, his face haggard. I know I shouldn't be here. I know you don't want to see me. But I need to tell you something, and I need to tell you in person. Jordan was too tired to be angry. Make it quick. Hayes pulled out a tablet and opened a folder of screenshots. After you left the dojo that day, I started going through our security footage. Not just from the main floor, but from the office computers. I wanted to understand how things had gotten so toxic without me seeing it. He handed her the tablet. The screenshots showed private chat logs from a group message thread titled VMA Elite Squad. The participants were Kira and 4 senior students. The messages went back months. Jordan scrolled through them, her stomach churning. The conversations were brutal, students mocking newer members, planning tests designed to humiliate weaker fighters, coordinating social media attacks on competitors from other dojos. And in the middle of it all, Kira orchestrating everything like a general commanding an army. But there was more. Recent messages from the day after the viral video went live. Plans to make that bitch nurse pay for embarrassing us. Discussions of finding Jordan's address. Debates about whether to target her at work or at home. And then, 3 days ago, one of the students suggesting they redirect everyone's anger toward Kira instead, since she's the one who actually fucked up. The account that suggested it belonged to Derek Matheson, the 17-year-old who'd posted the original video. He set her up, Hayes said, his voice shaking. Derek realized the dojo was going to be destroyed and Kira was the perfect scapegoat, so he orchestrated a campaign to make sure all the public fury landed on her instead of spreading to the rest of us. He posted her address, he coordinated the harassment, he made her the villain so everyone else could walk away clean. Jordan looked up from the tablet. Does Kira know? I don't think so. She thought it was random internet hate. She never knew it was her own students turning on her. You need to give this to the FBI, right now. I already sent it to Agent Frost, but Jordan, Hayes met her eyes. I need you to know that I failed everyone. Not just Kira, not just you. I let a culture of cruelty develop in my dojo because it won trophies. I taught kids that strength meant domination instead of discipline. And now a young woman is in critical condition because I was too cowardly to stop it sooner. What are you going to do about it? Hayes's expression was hollow. I'm closing Vanguard permanently, selling the building, donating the proceeds to organizations that help bullying victims. I spent 40 years building something I thought was honorable, and it turned into a factory for producing exactly the kind of people martial arts is supposed to prevent. I can't fix that, but I can make sure it doesn't continue. Jordan handed back the tablet. Kira's parents are at the hospital. You should tell them what you found. They deserve to know their daughter was betrayed by people she trusted. Hayes nodded and turned to leave. Then he stopped. For whatever it's worth, I saw the interview you did. The things you said about strength and humility and doing the right thing when no one's watching. That's what I thought I was teaching. I was wrong, but you weren't. You lived it. He walked away, leaving Jordan alone in the hallway. She entered her apartment, locked the door, and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of the last 4 days. Everything had spiraled so far beyond her control that she barely recognized the landscape anymore. The dojo was closing. Kyra was in critical condition. Derek Matheson and his co-conspirators were about to face federal charges. The internet was tearing itself apart over whether Jordan was a hero or a manipulator, and the Navy wanted her to be the face of their recruiting campaign. All because she'd stopped to help a girl with a hurt wrist. Jordan's phone buzzed one final time. A message from Jennifer Kwan. Just saw the breaking news about the FBI investigation. This story just got a lot bigger. I'd like to do a follow-up interview tomorrow. Are you available? Jordan stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a response that felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown air. Yes. But this time, I want to tell the whole story. No editing, no sound bites. People need to understand what actually happened and why. Can you do that? Kwan's reply came instantly. Yes, I'll clear an hour of airtime. This deserves to be told right. Jordan set down her phone and looked around her apartment. The quiet, unremarkable space she'd built specifically to escape attention and complexity. That life was gone now, burned away by circumstances she couldn't have predicted, and choices she wouldn't take back even if she could. Tomorrow, she would tell the truth. All of it, and whatever came after that would come. But tonight, in the darkness of her apartment, Jordan Reyes allowed herself one moment of weakness. She put her face in her hands and cried for Kira Brennan, for herself, for every person who'd been caught in the machinery of viral outrage and ground to pieces by it. Then she wiped her eyes, stood up, and began preparing for the interview that would finally let her control her own narrative. Outside her window, Bridgeport slept, and in a hospital room 3 miles away, a young woman's vitals slowly stabilized while federal agents worked through the night to build a case against the people who'd tried to destroy her. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning to find its real ending. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. Dawn broke over Bridgeport with the kind of clarity that felt almost accusatory, sunlight cutting through Jordan's apartment windows and forcing her awake after 3 hours of fitful sleep. She'd spent most of the night rehearsing what she would say in the interview, discarding speeches that sounded too defensive or too preachy, trying to find words that would cut through the noise and actually reach people. Her phone showed 43 new messages. She ignored them all and made coffee. At 7 a.m., Agent Diana Frost called. Ms. Reyes, we've made arrests. I wanted you to hear it from me before it hits the news. Jordan set down her coffee cup carefully. Who? Derek Matheson and 2 other Vanguard students, Michael Torres and Sarah Vance. We executed search warrants at 6 this morning. All 3 are in custody. The evidence Master Hayes provided was crucial, but we also traced the VPN routes back to Matheson's home IP address. He wasn't as careful as he thought. What are the charges? Federal cyberstalking, conspiracy to harass, and because Ms. Brennan's suicide attempt can be directly linked to their actions. We're pursuing charges under the Interstate Communications Statute that allows for prosecution when online harassment leads to serious bodily harm. If convicted, they're each looking at 5 to 10 years. Jordan absorbed this, feeling none of the satisfaction she might have expected. They're teenagers. Matheson is 17, but will be tried as an adult due to the severity and premeditation. Torres is 19, Vance is 18, old enough to understand consequences. Frost's voice softened slightly. I know this doesn't feel like justice, but these kids orchestrated a campaign that nearly killed someone. That can't go unanswered. I know. Thank you for the update. One more thing. We found evidence they were planning to escalate to you next. If Ms. Brennan's attempt hadn't happened, you would have been their next target. You should know that. Jordan hung up and stared at her coffee, watching steam rise and dissipate. The machinery of justice was grinding forward, but it felt hollow. 3 kids had destroyed lives, Kira's, their own, and countless others caught in the crossfire, because they'd learned that cruelty could be packaged as strength, and nobody had stopped them soon enough. At 9 a.m., her phone rang. Bridgeport General. Jordan, it's Dr. Martinez. Kira's awake. She's asking for you. Jordan arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later, entering through the staff entrance to avoid the 2 news vans that had returned to their posts outside. Kira had been moved from the hyperbaric chamber to a private room on the 4th floor. Her parents sat in chairs beside her bed, looking like they'd aged a decade overnight. Mrs. Brennan stood when Jordan entered. Thank you for coming, she insisted. Kira looked small and fragile against the white hospital sheets, oxygen cannula in her nose, IV lines running to both arms. Her eyes were clear but carried a weight that hadn't been there before, the specific gravity that came from staring into an abyss and choosing to step back. You came, Kira said, her voice hoarse. You asked. Jordan pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Like someone filled my head with concrete. The doctors say I'll have headaches for weeks. Kira's eyes filled with tears. They also told me about Derek, about what he did. I'm sorry. Don't be. I created the environment that made him think it was okay. I taught him that destroying people was acceptable if you could get away with it. Kira's voice cracked. I just never thought I'd be on the receiving end. Mr. Brennan spoke from his chair, his voice rough with exhaustion. The FBI wants to interview Kira about the chat logs. They're building their case against the others. I'll tell them everything, Kira said. Every conversation, every plan we made to hurt people. All of it. She looked at Jordan. But first, I need to say something to you. The apology I gave before, that was about me wanting forgiveness. This one's different. I'm sorry for being cruel to you. I'm sorry for creating a culture where that cruelty was celebrated. And I'm sorry that my actions put you in a position where you felt responsible for what I did to myself. You weren't. This was my choice. A bad one, but mine. Jordan met her eyes steadily. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't see how badly you were struggling. You shouldn't have had to. You're not my therapist. You were just someone trying to help a patient, and I made it about ego and performance. Kira wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you recover. You talk to the FBI. You figure out who you want to be when this is over, and you accept that it won't be easy or quick. Plus, the internet will never let me forget. No, Jordan agreed. They won't. But the internet's memory is shallow. In 6 months, most people will have moved on. The ones who don't. That's their problem, not yours. You can't control what strangers think. You can only control what you do next. Mrs. Brennan spoke softly. We're moving. Selling the house in Billings. Relocating to Oregon where my sister lives. Fresh start. New city. Kira's going to work with a therapist who specializes in internet harassment trauma and recovery. That's good, Jordan said. Distance helps. She stayed for another 10 minutes, answering Kira's questions about recovery timelines and what to expect from the FBI interview process. Then she excused herself, leaving the Brennans to their fragile family reunion. In the hallway, she found Commander Delgado waiting. Chief Reyes, do you have a moment? They walked to a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria. Delgado bought 2 coffees and sat down across from her with the careful posture of someone carrying official business. Marcus is being discharged tomorrow, he said. Full recovery, no permanent damage. The neurosurgeon said if you'd been even 10 minutes slower recognizing the symptoms, we'd be having a very different conversation. I'm glad he's okay. So am I. Which is why I wanted to tell you in person. I've submitted a formal commendation to the Navy on your behalf. What you did in that dojo, the way you handled the medical emergency while managing a chaotic civilian situation, that represents the best of what we train our corpsmen to be. The Secretary of the Navy is reviewing it personally. Jordan felt a familiar weight settling on her shoulders. Commander, I appreciate the thought, but I don't need commendations. I just want to work. I understand, but sometimes what we want and what we've earned are different things. Delgado pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. This is a formal invitation from the Naval Academy to speak at their next orientation for corpsman candidates. They want you to talk about transition from military to civilian medicine. It's optional, completely your choice, but I think those kids could learn a lot from you. Jordan took the envelope without opening it. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Delgado stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The Marines you saved in Kandahar, the ones from Sergeant Williamson's unit, they've started a scholarship fund for corpsman training. They named it after you. I thought you should know. He left before Jordan could respond. She sat in the cafeteria holding the envelope, feeling the accumulated weight of other people's gratitude pressing down like atmospheric pressure. All she'd ever wanted was to be good at her job and left alone. But somewhere along the way, competence had become visibility, and visibility had become responsibility. At 2 p.m., Jordan arrived at Northern Lights News Network for her interview with Jennifer Kwan. The studio was the same as before, but this time felt different. The stakes were higher. The story had evolved beyond a viral moment into something that touched on justice, accountability, and the human cost of internet outrage. Kwan met her at the entrance, her expression serious. I've cleared an hour, no commercial breaks. We're streaming it live on all platforms simultaneously. This is your chance to tell the complete story on your terms. Are you ready? No, Jordan said honestly. But let's do it anyway. They settled into the studio chairs. Makeup artists offered their services. Jordan declined. The camera operator counted down from 5. The red light blinked on. I'm here again with Jordan Reyes, Kwan began, her voice carrying the gravity of breaking news. Since our last conversation, this story has taken dramatic turns. Ms. Reyes, let's start with last night. Kira Brennan, the martial arts instructor from the viral video, attempted suicide. Can you talk about what happened? Jordan took a breath. Kira was subjected to a coordinated harassment campaign that included doxing, property destruction, and sustained psychological abuse. That campaign was orchestrated by people she trusted, students from her own dojo who decided she made a convenient scapegoat for their collective behavior. When the pressure became unbearable, she made a terrible choice. She's alive because a neighbor acted quickly, and she's recovering now. The FBI made arrests this morning. 3 former students from Vanguard Martial Arts are being charged with federal crimes related to the harassment campaign. How do you feel about that? I feel like this is what happens when we teach young people that destroying others is acceptable if you can justify it as consequences or accountability. Those students learn from watching adults on the internet turn public shaming into entertainment. They learn from a culture that rewards cruelty dressed up as justice. And now they're facing real consequences for applying those lessons. Kwan leaned forward slightly. Some people have criticized you for defending Kira after what she did to you. They say you're enabling a bully. What's your response? My response is that I'm not defending what Kira did. I'm defending her right to survive her mistakes and become better. There's a difference between accountability and annihilation. Accountability means Kira faces consequences. She lost her instructor position, her reputation, her sense of safety. Annihilation means we keep punishing her until there's nothing left. I don't believe in annihilation. I believe people can change if we give them the space to do it. You've also faced criticism from some veterans who feel you were too soft, that you should have let Kira face the full consequences of her actions without intervening. Jordan's jaw tightened. I've been called a lot of things this week. Too soft. Too hard. A hero, a doormat. The truth is simpler than any of those labels. I'm someone who knows what combat looks like, and I know the difference between necessary force and unnecessary cruelty. What happened to Kira wasn't necessary. It was cruelty pretending to be justice, and I won't participate in that no matter who tells me I should. Let's talk about the broader implications. This story has sparked a national conversation about internet harassment, accountability culture, and how we treat people who make public mistakes. What do you think needs to change? Jordan looked directly into the camera. We need to remember that the people on our screens are real. They have families, mental health struggles, and the capacity to be destroyed by sustained public hatred. When we see someone make a mistake, our first instinct shouldn't be to maximize their suffering. It should be to ask whether piling on actually serves justice or just satisfies our own desire to feel morally superior. And we need to teach young people that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about discipline, compassion, and knowing when to walk away from a fight that serves no purpose. You served 3 deployments in combat zones. You've been decorated for valor. You've saved lives under fire. How has that experience shaped your perspective on what's happened this week? Jordan was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. In combat, every decision has weight. You can't waste energy on performance or ego because those things get people killed. You focus on the mission, on keeping your people alive, on doing the job with maximum efficiency and minimum waste. When I look at what happened this week, the viral video, the harassment, the mob mentality, all I see is wasted energy. People expending enormous effort to destroy someone who made a stupid mistake, instead of directing that energy toward actually helping anyone. It's combat training in reverse. Maximum waste, minimum purpose. The Navy has invited you to participate in recruiting initiatives and speak at the Naval Academy. Have you decided whether to accept? I have. I'm going to accept, but on my terms. I'm not going to be a poster for military recruitment. I'm going to talk to young people about service, about what it costs and what it teaches you, and about the responsibility that comes with skills designed for survival. If that helps the Navy, fine. But my priority is making sure the next generation understands that real strength isn't about performance. It's about character. Quan shifted topics. Master Victor Reyes announced this morning that Vanguard Martial Arts is closing permanently. He's donating the proceeds from selling the building to anti-bullying organizations. Do you have any thoughts on that decision? I think it took courage for him to recognize that he'd built something toxic and choose to end it rather than try to salvage his reputation. That's accountability. He created an environment where cruelty thrived, and he's accepting responsibility by shutting it down. I respect that. What happens next for you? Jordan smiled slightly for the first time in the interview. I go back to work. I'm a nurse at Bridgeport General Hospital. That's my job, and it's what I love doing. The viral fame will fade. The internet will find someone new to obsess over. And I'll still be here, working night shifts, helping patients, and living as quietly as I can. One final question. If you could say one thing to everyone watching this, the people who supported you, the people who criticized you, the young people who are trying to figure out what strength really means, what would it be? Jordan looked directly into the camera, her voice steady and clear. Real strength is quiet. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. It shows up when no one's watching and does the right thing because it's right, not because it will get likes or retweets. And real justice isn't about maximizing someone's suffering. It's about creating accountability that allows for growth and redemption. If you want to be strong, be kind. If you want justice, build systems that help people become better, not machinery that destroys them. And if you see someone struggling, help them, even if they don't deserve it, even if no one will thank you. That's what actual heroes do. The interview concluded. The red light went dark. Quan smiled and extended her hand. That was powerful. Thank you for trusting me with it. Jordan shook her hand. Thank you for giving me the platform. She left the studio and drove back to her apartment. The interview would air in 3 hours, edited down to 45 minutes of the most critical moments. But the full version would stream online, unedited and complete. At 5 p.m., her phone rang. Rear Admiral Kincaid. I watched the interview live, Kincaid said without preamble. That was exactly what the Navy needed to hear from you. Clear, principled, and authentic. The Secretary of the Navy has approved your involvement in our recruiting initiatives on your terms. We'll coordinate through my office. No pressure, no obligations beyond what you're comfortable with. Thank you, ma'am. And Jordan, off the record, I'm proud to have served with you. What you did this week, the way you handled an impossible situation with grace and integrity, that's what leadership looks like. Don't let anyone tell you different. At 6 p.m., Jordan turned on the television and watched the edited interview broadcast across Montana and 3 neighboring states. The production was tight, focused, emotionally resonant without being manipulative. Quan had kept her word. Jordan's message came through clearly and powerfully. Within an hour, the response began flooding in. Social media lit up with reactions that split predictably, some praising her compassion, others accusing her of weakness. But underneath the noise, a different conversation was starting. People sharing their own experiences with internet harassment, young people talking about the pressure to perform cruelty as proof of moral superiority, veterans discussing the difference between strength and aggression. The narrative was shifting. At 8 p.m., Patricia texted, "You killed it. Everyone at the hospital is talking about the interview. You made us all proud." At 9 p.m., Captain Vasquez called, "That's how you control a narrative. Well done, Chief." At 10 p.m., Jordan received an email from Derek Williamson, the Marine she'd saved in Kandahar. "Watched your interview with my daughter. Afterwards, she asked me what a hero looks like. I showed her your picture. Thank you for continuing to lead by example. The scholarship fund has raised $47,000 so far. We're going to change lives because you changed ours." Jordan read the email 3 times, then closed her laptop and sat in the darkness of her apartment, feeling something she hadn't felt in days: peace. The next morning, she returned to work. The hospital staff greeted her with quiet respect, but didn't make a spectacle of it. Patricia assigned her to the ER, where a steady stream of patients needed care that had nothing to do with viral videos or national conversations. Jordan treated a child with a broken arm, an elderly man with chest pain, a woman in labor whose contractions were coming too fast for a safe drive to the maternity ward. She started IVs, administered medications, monitored vitals, and provided the kind of quiet, competent care that had defined her entire career. At 2 p.m., during a brief lull, Dr. Fisher approached her. "Jordan, I wanted to tell you, the hospital board met this morning. They're creating a new position, Director of Trauma Readiness and Medical Education. It would involve training staff on emergency protocols, coordinating with first responders, and developing educational programs for the community. They want to offer it to you." Jordan looked up from her charting. "That's a leadership role." "Yes, with appropriate compensation, regular hours, and the autonomy to build the program however you see fit. You've demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure, and your military experience gives you unique insight into trauma medicine. We'd be lucky to have you in this capacity. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. The position doesn't officially exist until we fill it, so there's no rush." 2 days later, Kira was discharged from the hospital. The Brennans left Montana quietly, driving west toward their new life in Oregon. Kira had given her full statement to the FBI, providing evidence that strengthened the case against Derek Matheson and his co-conspirators. The internet had already moved on to its next target, a celebrity scandal that promised fresh outrage and moral certainty. 3 days after that, Master Hayes sold the Vanguard building for $1.2 million and donated every dollar to 3 organizations, one supporting bullying victims, one providing mental health resources for teenagers, and one offering free martial arts training to underserved communities with curriculum focused on discipline and character rather than competition. 1 week after the interview, Jordan accepted the position as Director of Trauma Readiness and Medical Education at Bridgeport General Hospital. She negotiated for one condition. The program would include mandatory training on recognizing mental health crises and providing compassionate care to all patients, regardless of how they'd ended up needing help. Dr. Fisher agreed immediately. 2 weeks later, Jordan stood in front of 300 Navy corpsman candidates at the Naval Academy, telling them about the transition from military to civilian medicine. She talked about the skills that transferred: composure under pressure, systematic thinking, the ability to make life or death decisions with incomplete information. But she also talked about the skills they'd need to learn: patience with patients who weren't disciplined Marines, compassion for people whose trauma came from sources other than combat, and the humility to recognize that civilian medicine was just as challenging as military service, just in different ways. When she finished, the candidates gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, a young woman approached her, 19 years old, fresh from boot camp, eyes shining with determination. "Chief Reyes, I enlisted because I saw your video. The way you moved, the way you stayed calm, that's who I want to be. Can I ask you one question?" "Of course." "How do you stay humble when everyone wants to make you into something bigger than you are?" Jordan smiled. "You remember why you started. I became a corpsman to help people, not to be famous. Every time someone tries to put me on a pedestal, I remind myself that the work matters more than the recognition. As long as you stay focused on the mission, helping people, saving lives, being good at your job, the rest is just noise. The young woman nodded solemnly. Thank you, Chief. I won't forget that. 3 months later, Jordan was working a night shift when a young man came into the ER with a sprained ankle from a martial arts accident. While she wrapped his ankle, he mentioned he'd just started training at a new dojo that had opened where Vanguard used to be. What's it like? Jordan asked. Different. The instructor, Master Reyes, he came out of retirement. He's really strict about respect and safety. Says martial arts is about discipline, not dominance. It's intense, but in a good way. Nobody gets bullied there. He shuts that down immediately. Jordan smiled and finished the wrapping. Sounds like he learned something. He talks about you sometimes, says you taught him what real strength looks like, that it's not about fighting, it's about knowing when to fight and when to heal. Jordan sent the young man home with care instructions and returned to the nurse's station, where Patricia was reviewing charts. Heard that? Patricia asked. Yeah. Feel good? Jordan considered the question. It feels like maybe something good came out of all the chaos. That's enough. 6 months after the viral video, Jordan's life had settled into a new rhythm. She worked 3 days a week in the ER and 2 days running her trauma education program. She'd spoken at 2 more military academies and 1 national conference on emergency medicine. The scholarship fund in her name had raised over $200,000 and was funding the training of 6 new corpsmen. The internet had forgotten her mostly. Occasionally someone would recognize her and ask for a picture. She politely declined and went about her day. Kira Brennan sent her a letter from Oregon. It was short and honest. I'm working at a community center teaching basic self-defense to women. Nothing fancy, just practical skills. My therapist says I'm making progress. I'm never going to be the person I was before, but maybe that's the point. Thank you for showing me that strength can look like mercy. I'm trying to live that way now. Jordan wrote back, keep going. The person you're becoming matters more than the person you were. 1 year after the dojo incident, Jordan received a formal invitation to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society Gala in Washington, D.C. She would be receiving the Distinguished Service Award for her military career and her continued contributions to emergency medicine and veteran advocacy. She accepted, on the condition that they also recognize Derek Williamson and the other Marines from Kandahar who'd started the scholarship fund. At the gala, wearing dress blues she'd had to have taken out of storage, Jordan stood on stage while a rear admiral read her citation. The ballroom held 500 people, politicians, military brass, civilians who supported veteran causes. When the medal was placed around her neck, the room erupted in applause. Jordan approached the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. I'm honored by this recognition, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. But I want to be very clear about something. I didn't serve for medals or recognition. I served because people needed help, and I had the skills to provide it. That's still why I work. Every day, in a hospital in Montana, I help people who are having the worst day of their lives. Some of them are grateful. Some of them are angry. Some of them are scared. And none of them care about my military record or my awards. They just want competent care from someone who sees them as human beings. That's the work that matters, not the applause, not the ceremonies. The quiet moments where you choose to help someone even when it costs you something. That's service. And you don't need a uniform or a medal to do it. You just need to show up and do the work. The applause that followed was different, quieter, but deeper somehow. After the ceremony, Jordan was approached by a teenager who'd been part of a youth veteran appreciation group. Ms. Reyes, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you deal with people who don't believe you're strong because you're nice? Jordan knelt down to the girl's eye level. You remember that strength and kindness aren't opposites. The strongest people I've ever known were also the kindest. Because real strength, the kind that matters, isn't about how much damage you can do. It's about how much good you can create even when it's hard. People who think kindness is weakness usually confuse loudness with power. Don't make that mistake. The girl smiled. Thank you. I won't. Jordan flew back to Montana the next morning and returned to work that afternoon, because the ER was short-staffed and patients needed care. Life continued. The viral video existed somewhere in the depths of the internet, occasionally resurfacing when someone discovered it and shared it again. But the story had been told completely now. The truth was public. The accountability had been served. And Jordan Reyes had done what she'd always done, survived, adapted, and continued helping people. On a quiet Tuesday evening, 18 months after the dojo incident, Jordan finished her shift and walked out to her car under a sky streaked with orange and purple. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, watching the sunset, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion that came from a good day's work. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't recognize. "Chief Reyes, this is Corpsman Second Class Rachel Morrison. I'm one of the scholarship recipients from the fund your Marines started. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm stationed at Camp Pendleton now, working with a Marine battalion, and I think about your interview every time I face a tough call. The part where you said real strength is quiet. That gets me through the hard days. I hope you know the impact you've had on people like me who are trying to follow your example. Semper Fi." Jordan read the message twice, then typed a simple response. "Stay safe. Trust your training. And remember, the work matters more than the recognition. You've got this." She put the phone away, started the car, and drove home through the streets of Bridgeport as the city settled into evening routines. The hospital would need her again tomorrow. Patients would come through the doors carrying pain and fear and hope, and she would be there to help them, the same way she'd always been there. Not because she was a hero, not because she wanted recognition, but because it was the right thing to do, and she had the skills to do it well. That was enough. It had always been enough. And as Jordan Reyes pulled into her apartment parking lot and looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride in the life she'd built, gratitude for the work she did, and peace with the person she'd become. The story that had started with mockery and humiliation had ended with justice, growth, and quiet triumph. Not because she'd destroyed her enemies, but because she'd refused to become what they thought she was, and in doing so, had shown everyone watching what real strength actually looked like.